This American soldier was found alone. No witnesses, no orders, no medals, only the choice he made, when no one was watching. By the final years of World War II, the war no longer looked heroic. The grand newsreels, the parades, the triumphant headlines, those were for the people back home. For the men on the front lines, particularly in the grueling European theater, the reality was something else entirely. It was a landscape of exhaustion, a relentless grind that wore down not just bodies, but souls. Men who had been farm boys, clerks, and mechanics just a few years prior were now veterans of a conflict that had stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Morality, once a clear line between good and evil, had become blurred and smudged by the mud and the blood. Survival often meant making decisions no one prepared you for. The training taught you how to shoot, how to march, how to follow orders. It never taught you how to navigate the silent, grey spaces in between. Not every battle was fought with gunfire. Some of the most profound conflicts were fought in the quiet recesses of a single human heart. A moment of hesitation, a choice made in an instant, could define a person more than any medal ever could. This is the story of one such moment. A battle fought in silence, long forgotten by history, but etched into the very soil of a foreign land. Decades after the war, long after the victory parades had ended and the world had tried to move on, a construction crew was clearing land near a destroyed farmhouse in rural France. The area had been a brutal battleground, a place where entire companies had vanished in the chaos of combat. As they dug, they unearthed something that brought the past rushing back into the present. Human remains. The uniform fragments and gear confirmed the identity: an American soldier. But his story was immediately a puzzle. His dog tags were missing, a common enough occurrence in the heat of battle. His weapon was not in his hands, nor was it slung over his shoulder. It lay a few feet away, untouched. This wasn't the typical scene of a soldier falling in combat. As investigators, accustomed to piecing together the final moments of the fallen, began to meticulously examine the area, they noticed something unusual. In the damp earth, preserved by time, were two distinct sets of footprints. One set was made by the heavy-soled combat boots of an American GI. The other belonged to the unmistakable hobnailed boots of an enemy soldier. The tracks told a story of two men converging on this exact spot, but only one body was found: the American. Where had the other man gone, and why was this soldier left here alone in such a strange and silent tableau? The clues were subtle, whispered by the earth itself. The footprints weren't those of a frantic firefight. There were no deep impressions of men running, diving for cover, or struggling. Instead, they suggested a slow, deliberate approach. The enemy soldier's tracks were uneven, dragging. One print was firm, the other shallow, scuffed. He was wounded. The evidence suggested he was unable to fight, and certainly unable to flee. He had likely stumbled to this spot, collapsing in exhaustion or from his injuries. Then came the American soldier's tracks. Firm, steady, walking right up to the spot where the other man had fallen. And then they stopped. The scene was devoid of the typical signs of a kill. There were no spent shell casings indicating a struggle or a final, desperate exchange of fire. There were no signs of a summary execution, no evidence of a close-quarters fight. Unit logs from the time were scoured, but they contained no record of an engagement in this specific sector on that day. There were no orders recorded, no mission debriefs. It was a moment that existed outside of the official history of the war, just a moment in time, frozen in the soil, where one man stood over another. One was armed and healthy, the other wounded and helpless. One held the power of life and death, and he had to choose. History, as it's written, often celebrates the trigger. We build monuments to the battles won, the enemies defeated, the objectives taken. The hero is the one who acts decisively, who eliminates the threat, who follows orders to their lethal conclusion. But rarely do we stop to ask what happens when the trigger is not pulled. What is the story of the moment of restraint? The American soldier stayed. His tracks show he did not immediately retreat to the safety of his own lines. He did not call for backup or report an enemy presence. He stood there over his adversary for an unknown length of time. The final positioning of his own body, and the undisturbed state of the scene, suggests something incredibly rare in war. He may have chosen restraint. He may have looked at the wounded man on the ground not as an enemy combatant, not as a symbol of an opposing ideology, but simply as another human being, suffering and defeated. In that moment, the war, with all its noise and fury, may have fallen silent. It became a choice, not between victory and defeat, but between humanity and the brutal logic of conflict. Sometimes courage is not about killing the enemy. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is refusing to become something else, refusing to let the war erase the man you were. The cost of this choice was absolute. The American soldier never returned to his unit. He was listed as missing in action, one of tens of thousands whose fates were swallowed by the war. No official report ever explained why he was found there, or how he died. Was it a stray artillery shell? Did he succumb to his own hidden wounds while standing guard? Or, in a final tragic irony, did another enemy patrol happen upon the scene? We will never know. But his remains were found in a position that suggested he had chosen to protect, not to escape. He hadn't turned his back. There was no recognition for his action, no headline in a hometown paper, no entry in a history book. His name isn't on a monument dedicated to this particular choice. Only the ground, the silent, patient earth of France remembered what happened. It held the secret of a man who, in his final moments, faced a test not of strength, but of character, and made a decision that cost him everything but his own humanity. War does not only test strength, it tests character. It pushes individuals to the very edge of what they believe, who they are, and what they are capable of. We remember the heroes of the charge, the pilots in the sky, the generals with their grand strategies. But perhaps we should also reserve a space in our memory for the silent heroes. The ones who made choices in the lonely, forgotten corners of the battlefield. The ones who showed mercy when none was required, and who demonstrated a different kind of bravery. The kind that doesn't win medals or change the course of a battle, but that affirms the enduring value of the human spirit even in the darkest of times. And sometimes, the bravest choice is the one no one will ever know about.